In this video, we're going to talk about managing your data, bringing data in, importing, etc. So typically when we're setting up a system, we'll be doing things like importing a chart of accounts, importing dimensions, bringing in your existing vendors into the system, and then on to actually bringing in and posting historical transactions. All these data elements are easy to bring into the system, and we have various tools that you can use to do this. These tools don't necessarily require our expertise, just some little familiarization and training. We give you all the tools we would use ourselves during implementation. So our goal is to always empower our customers to be self-sufficient and not have to depend on us. If we go into the administration area, the import-export mappings tool lets us define the different things we might want to bring in from external data sources, typically using Excel or CSV. So we'll be looking at importing in a little while a general journal set of transactions into the system. So if we look at this gen journal, we gave it a name. It is connected to predefined system layouts we have for the various kinds of data that you would want to bring in: bank information, your chart of accounts, currency rates, and codes, customers, banks, etc. So these are all the types of data elements you might want to consider bringing into the data. And you just select the data element that you want to tie into. In my case, this is a general journal entry. And we'll show you how to build this mapping a little bit. But essentially, this is the column in the Excel sheet, the column number in Excel, and the field that we're mapping it into inside our system. So that's for transactional imports. For things like bringing in vendors, typically what you would do is set up a file layout to map in. And for that master data, you just then hit the import from Excel button and it will bring in all those vendor records in this scenario. Let me show you an example of how the import mapping work, and we'll show you some other technical tools that you can use for the purposes of bringing data into the system. If I go into my journal entry, and let's say I want to start with a batch, I'm going to switch batches from ones that I've used before. Let's go ahead and just use my default batch, one that we see all the time. And I want to bring data in from Excel. And it's my data is sitting in Excel workbook. And instead of using mapping that I already have, I'm going to go ahead and go down to mappings, make a new mapping on the fly. And this is a trial mapping that we're doing. Sorry for the word test. And we're going to use the gen journal layout that we referenced before. I can just start typing partially to find that value. And in this case, I'm bringing in data from a sheet that has a header row, and I'm going to use column names versus column numbers so that we can read the data from any column in the Excel sheet. And when we go to manage down here, we're going to reference the Excel sheet that maybe somebody has sent us. And I have a demo example that I have pre-set up that I'm going to use here. And it is my batch journal import. We're going to notice I'm not picking a CSV file, I'm picking the Excel workbook. When I do this, it shows me all the sheets that exist in the workbook. I'm going to take the clean sheet and use that as a model. And you notice these are all the columns in Excel. Let's go ahead and open this sheet so we can take a look at it. Demo sport, let's just open this sheet. You can see what the workbook looks like that I'm bringing in. So this is a sheet with errors on it that I deliberately made, sheets where the data is clean. Notice the column uh, names are in different orders. It doesn't matter as long as the names will match. And let's go ahead and close this down here. Come back over to our software. And where it finds the names that match, I deliberately did not put the right names in my Excel workbook here. So I'm going to pick my department code to match into. This is a real field inside our system. And I'm going to skip ground because I don't actually have the ground dimension anymore like I had in my workbook. So I'm just going to ignore that column in Excel. Okay, so now that we've got the mapping defined, I can go ahead, choose that trial mapping, then pick the workbook, and I'm going to choose the same workbook, which is the Batch J demo. And this time I'm going to pick the tab where I had errors, or the sheet where I had errors. We'll evaluate the sheet and then show the places in the Excel workbook where we had errors. So columns, cells G3 and M5 had problems because I deliberately entered X's instead of a number and then entered a bad fund number. So those don't match and the system won't bring them in. If I go ahead and use that trial mapping and choose the clean sheet, that data should pass my cleanliness test. And voila, we have the 4 rows coming in from Excel. This import from Excel is probably one of the most favorite features among our customer base. Nonprofit customers tend to really love doing things in Excel, but let's do things in Excel that make sense, but use the Excel integration that Microsoft provides and we built upon to make things easier for you. The other way to bring in data, and this is a slightly more technical approach, the import mappings we build for accounting users, so you don't need to have technical knowledge. But you can also set up configuration templates in the system where you can go ahead and reference all the data, all the columns in the system. And this is a way sometimes we'll use to bring over mass amounts of integrated data in the system using configuration templates. Again, here, once you have your templates, you have the ability to go ahead and import those straight into the system, and it manages all the integrity of the data coming in. So we wanted to talk about during the implementation, obviously we'll have a lot of data to fill, convert, bring in across all your different companies, but rest assured that there's lots of tools in the system that are not super technical programming tools that most power users can use, as well as Excel import mappings that most any normal accountant with a little Excel knowledge should be able to use.